All right, hey guys, I'm Jeffrey,
And I'm John.
and together we're the Cross-Eyed Guys. We're on episode 3 ever of our podcast. The first two episodes we covered church hurt from the perspective of a member of a church, and then John shared his perspective as a minister of a church. Why don't you tell us what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, so this week we're going to capture the idea of moving beyond the hurt. Um, so a lot of times in the church world, when somebody gets hurt, they typically just deconstruct or they move away or they kind of just like, possibly walk away from the church in general. And so, this week we want to talk about moving beyond the hurt with the perspective of, you're not going to leave, you're not going to stop your relationship with the Lord. You continue, you pick up, you carry on, and you move forward.
Right, and so many podcast channels and YouTube channels out there are helmed by people who have left the church, capital C Universal, and then they talk about their experience deconstructing, and we just want to make sure people know that that doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why our testimonies in the last two episodes weren't so detailed around what the church did. Um, you know, there's a lot of things that the church can do or people in the church can do to hurt your feelings, but at the same time, it's not about what they do; it's about how you respond that's important. Um, and so today we'll focus a lot more on relationship instead of actually hurt. And so I think that there's at least three things that we can talk about or highlight today. There's probably a lot of reasons that relationships fall apart, um, but today we'll talk about three of them, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So, the first thing that's going to really cause, especially in the church world, that it's going to kind of cause some hurt, some pain, is going to be unmet expectation. And so, unmet expectations happen when there's under delivered, uh, expectations or unclearly outlined expectations. And so, what that looks like is like under delivered. Okay, so when you look at an under delivery on expectations, it's like I've clearly laid this out for you. You're on my team. I'm the leader, and I have laid this out to say this is what we do. This is how we do it, and then you veer off and do whatever you want.
Mm,
So now as a leader, I'm frustrated. I'm like, gosh, why can't this guy ever do what I've laid out? Like we've worked on this, we've prayed about it, we've thought this through. We've done all the things, and yet this guy just can't figure it out. The other side of that would be like, unclear, or stuff that's just not outlined well. So like, you got a volunteer who's going, guys, you never told me that I need to do that.
hmm
You didn't lay this out for me. You left me out here in left field trying to figure this thing out. You're like, oh, go teach that kids class, and here I am teaching the kids class, and a year later you have a problem.
hmm
Like it's an unmet expectation. I expected you to lay it out for me that what I needed to do, and you didn't do that, and now a year later we have an issue. Um, but I think really honestly the problem is that sometimes we don't talk that out. When those things come up, we don't ask the questions.
hmm
We just good leaders. Um, people who want to be good leaders, I should say, sometimes they go, "Well, I'll just figure it out. I'll just make it up." You
hmm
know, when in reality, what we should be doing is going, "Well, I don't really know, so let's not make up something. Let's go ask questions."
Right, and if there's an issue or something, it's brought up immediately, and not sat for a year or two,
Yeah,
addressed in the moment.
yeah, absolutely. We have to head those things off pretty early on. Otherwise, they kind of fester. And if there's unmet expectations in one area of ministry, there's probably unmet expectations in other areas of ministry. And so, eventually you get to a place where either side, either the volunteer that's helping out or the staff person who's, you know, watching you serve, uh, they can either way they can get to a place where it's like mounting up stuff. Almost like we're counting all the evidence that you have.
hmm
Tallying it all up, to make sure.
Right.
um, Another way is like misaligned values, right? So another way that things can kind of fall off, or relationships in a church can suffer, are misaligned values. So misaligned values is, that's basically when someone in the relationship values certain things at a higher level than the other person. You you can always go extreme, and you can talk about like marriage and then cheating and stuff. So like, one person in a marriage might have the value of, we're gonna it's just gonna be me and you, and then the
Hmm.
other person in the marriage is like, well, no, it's gonna be me, you, and then like whoever,
Me, you, and Stu.
and Stu. But it's that's just a silly way to talk about it. But um, in the church world, where that really happens is, like in the teaching realm. So the church might have a belief system where they might teach a thing a certain way, and then they go, and I expect everybody on my team, again, unmet expectations, but I expect everybody on my team to believe and feel the same way I do about this.
Hmm.
So in our last church, that would have fallen around, tithing. There was tithing issues where, like, the church is clearly setting out this expectation of, this is what we teach, this is what we believe, but then some of the individuals have a difference in perspective. Um, like, well, no, we studied it out, and it's not necessarily that. But instead of having a conversation to align those values or come to a place of agreeing to disagree, it just festers.
Hmm.
And then now you've got frustration on both sides of the party because the values don't align.
Right, and he's just said like to be able to agree to disagree. Some of that non-essential stuff. You should be able to agree and disagree, and things essentially go on as normal. That you can still serve here or there. Um, it shouldn't be a point of you know disunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about it like in my job, and specifically, we have individuals who show up to work and they're just late, like, every day. It doesn't matter. They're going to be late. They could have woke up 3 hours early that day, and they will be late for work. And you know, our boss, or the older generation, we have this value system where we're just like, you're going to be on time
Hmm.
every time. As a matter of fact, if you're on time, you're late. So you
Right.
probably need to be early.
Hmm.
And the younger generation's like, no, man. When I get here, I get here. Be thankful that I'm here.
Right.
And I never will understand that perspective, but we legitimately have individuals who feel that way. Um, so there's a misalignment in values. Um, in old school employment, you would get to a place where your boss goes, you know what, you don't work here anymore,
Right.
because misaligned values will bring about the dismissal of your job.
Hmm.
So another way, that things can kind of fall apart in a relationship, especially when it comes to churches, is inappropriate role assignments. And so, that's kind of like a person expects a pastor to be a counselor. Your pastor may not have that skill. He may not have gone to school for that, and he likely isn't a counselor in any way. But you're going through something and you need a counselor, and instead of hiring somebody, you're like, Pastor, talk to me about this. And
Hmm.
then he gives you like biblical advice. You know, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
Goes the extreme.
Goes the extreme. But he doesn't really walk you through it as a counselor. So now there's this or inappropriate role assignment. So I'm trying to force this role on you that you don't really fit. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Um, or that could be like employment, employee to boss, where an employee looks at their boss and they're like, I want to be his best friend, and that's just inappropriate.
Hmm.
Like, that's not your boss's job. His job isn't to be your best friend.
Yeah. Not that that can't happen, but his first job is to be your boss.
Yeah, yeah, because that's going to eliminate favoritism, right?
Hmm.
Or like, look at a parent and a child. If the mom is trying to be best friends with their kid, like, that's probably an appropriate role assignment.
Hmm.
Um, you probably don't want to be the parent that's like, you know, so helicopter hovering, um, that your kids never experience anything in life. but at the same time, you cannot be the parent who is so or so much of a best friend to your kid that they don't respect you as a parent.
Hmm.
You know,
That bond of friendship can come later in life, especially when the child is off on their own, and just the dynamic of the relationship changes, and you can develop that friendship. Um,
yeah, and honestly, that's the thing. Like, develop your friendships with your friends or with your kids as your kids become adults.
mhm.
Not while they're children. Um, they need the love and the support of their parent. They need a parent going,
Right.
like, hey, it's hot on the bottom.
Right.
Don't
It's
touch that.
hot on the
Yeah.
bottom.
Don't touch it.
Hmm.
You know, you don't need your best friend going, you know, mess around and find out.
Right.
uh, so anyway, you know, unmet expectations, misaligned values, and inappropriate role assignments will kill church relationships every time.
I agree. And it's things that both you and I have experienced
Yeah,
in
100%.
our separate stories.
Yeah. And so the Bible says a lot about relationships. But I don't know. Let's just jump into the Bible. So the Bible, it says a lot about relationships. So we got a couple of verses here that we want to kind of read to you, and we'll talk this out a little bit as we go along. But what do you got, Jeffrey?
I'm going to start with 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8. And here we go. I had it. All right. Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, what's your next one?
Next one is from Colossians chapter 3, verse 13. And you who were dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's relationship with the Lord. Um, and then I've got a couple. Colossians chapter 3, or yeah,
Proverbs.
sorry, Proverbs chapter
Trying to take my
17. Try and take
scripture.
your scripture. Man, come on now. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 17 says this: a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversary. A friend loves at all times. Like, that's what we expect out of church people, right? Like,
Hmm.
a friend that loves at all times, so we don't
Hmm.
expect it to ever go south. Um, but sometimes it does. And then I've got another one, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, and it says this: therefore, comfort each other and edify one another, just as you also are doing. And so, we need to comfort each other, right? Like
Hmm.
like you expect that out of a church. So, the Bible has a lot to say about relationships, but um, we can't really cover all of that in this podcast. But I would suggest that there's no such thing as church hurt. I,
Uh,
go ahead.
yeah, I agree. It'd be like saying that driving down the road and someone rear ends you or something, does damage to your car, and you're like, well, I've experienced car hurt, and I'm not going to touch a car again
Yeah,
because that person rear ended me on my way to work.
yeah. Or like going to Walmart and then the cashier is rude to you, and you're like, oh, I've got Walmart hurt.
Right.
I'm never going back to Walmart again. But yeah, I would say there's no such thing as church hurt. I would suggest that it's actually relationship hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from individuals that we give permission to hold an emotional spot in our being.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the people that you love are the ones that can hurt you. The
Mm-hmm.
people that you care about are the ones that can hurt you. And it's rarely ever the entire church. To say church hurt incorporates the entire church, like Big C
Right.
Church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that it's not church. It's not the church. It's not church hurt.
Mm-hmm. It's people
It's people hurt.
hurt, and it you see these people that you've broken bread with these people, you've been inside their homes, and you kind of put them on a pedestal. I know that I can be real guilty of this when meeting different people, and I get in their head, I put them on a pedestal, and so when that person reveals themselves to be in fact be human, um, it can be a shock to the system, and really it's not. Although as Christians we're supposed to be held to a higher standard,
Yeah,
we can't hold each other to a perfect standard.
yeah,
It's not fair for me to put people on pedestals, um, just to basically set them up for failure.
yeah, yeah. And and people have their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes their lives don't revolve around ours, and sometimes that can be painful.
Mm-hmm.
Like I expect you to be there. I expect when I call, you're going to answer the phone, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that can't happen. Um, so like I don't expect my friends to function or act like or respond the way that my wife does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would be unrealistic, right? Inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm dealing with something and I call you, I can't just be like, well, you didn't answer the phone, so I'm mad, and
Right.
you know,
Right.
like I have to just be okay with the idea that, oh, you're an individual, and maybe you weren't doing a single thing. You just didn't feel like answering the phone,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think the bigger question is, what do you do when you've experienced church hurt? You know, what are a couple of things, or what's the thing that typically happens to people?
Well, I know for me personally, I've thought about, on social media when you have like your memories come across your feed, and memories do come across from the church we left, and you can delete those memories off so they don't show up anymore. But I don't do that because it is a part of our history, and there were a lot of good times, and I think about how like our former pastor. My parents they only got to meet him once, but my dad just absolutely loved him, and
Yeah,
um, he passed. My dad passed away shortly after, and even after um, um, meeting him only once, there was such an impact there that my mom asked me to ask him to be part of his service,
yeah,
and he was more than willing to do it, and I love him for doing that, and um, I don't think I thanked him enough for being willing to do that, and I just think of those times and think of the things that they have done for us that I'm genuinely grateful for.
yeah, yeah. And honestly, I mean, in my situation, um, I deleted a bunch of memories. Uh, you know, some of that pain was just so raw. Every time that I saw that stuff, I was like, you know what, I got to get rid of it.
Hmm.
And some of it is maybe a little bit of deconstruction. You start to deconstruct in yourself, and like I said in the earlier episode, I was just so mad.
Hmm.
I was so angry at everybody. Um, and that was part of me deconstructing, and where the enemy would love for me to just quit church and not be a part of anything anymore, and start getting on social medias and bad mouthing and talking trash, but that wouldn't do any good for the body of Christ, right?
Hmm.
Like that would be more detrimental and more hurtful to the body of Christ than to be able to find some form of healing or
Hmm.
reconciliation. And honestly, not every time do we go through church hurt does it have to be reconciled.
Right. Um, it doesn't mean that that goes for any sort of relationship where there's some sort of break.
Yeah,
You can come to a point of you've cleared the air. They've forgiven you, you've forgiven them, and it doesn't mean to go on to be best friends. Maybe something where you're just not in each other's lives, but you don't want to rip each other's throats out when you see each other in public. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Or you don't always try to avoid them. So I mean, for the first year after I lost my job with the church, me and my wife, we avoided everybody.
Hmm.
If we saw somebody in public, like the only way that you talked to us in public was you saw us first.
Hmm.
uh, you
The
know,
literal, I'll see you later, not if I see you 1st.
literally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what we did, man. For like a whole year, if we saw somebody from our old church, we were like, no thanks. And we would walk away. We would leave stores so we didn't have to talk to them. If that meant leaving a cart full of groceries, we was going to do it. We never actually had to leave a cart full of groceries, but we felt that strongly about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so, but it doesn't have to be that way. If we would have identified what we know today, then we may have walked through a different road.
Mm.
You know, the more you know.
Right? The more you know. And, maybe forward of me, but have you ever thought of like reaching out to, the pastor?
Yeah. So, I've thought about reaching out, and at this time, I've thought it's probably best that I just don't. Sometimes you just let bygones be bygones and
Hmm.
move on. Um, you know, Obviously, we likely will never come to an agreement on the situation and why I was let go from my job.
Hmm.
Um, and so the only real reconciliation that would be there would just be an acknowledgement of each other's wounds.
Hmm.
Um, and so could we do that? Sure, we probably could. Is it necessary? I don't think it necessarily is.
Hmm.
He's going to move forward. I'm going to move forward. Eventually, we're both going to continue to do ministry, and eventually we'll run into each other. And at that time, I doubt that in that moment there will be any, you know, reconciliation, but there will be acknowledgement of one another where we just kind of have already made a decision to move on.
Hmm.
So yeah, but I think part of the problem with church hurt is so many people deconstruct. Um, like you were talking about at the beginning of the podcast. Um, my wife, she started listening to other podcasts about church hurts, and it was good for a little bit. And then I started noticing that the more she listened to it, the more she took on those perspectives. And so I started looking into the individuals that she was watching.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, are these individuals sharing testimonies from a place of healing, or are they sharing experience from a place of deconstruct? Or is it that they're just hurt still?
Hmm.
And so what I had determined for myself that the podcast that she was watching was individuals who had been church hurt, some of them by real notable churches,
Hmm.
um, but those individuals never healed. They never allowed themselves a place of moving to the other side of it. And so now they're sharing their story with individuals from a place of hurt. And the old saying is, hurt people hurt
Hurt
people."
people. Hmm.
Yeah. And so, that's exactly what was happening. Instead of it having an effect on my wife, where she was ready to, you know, receive healing or move forward or, find a place or a change of heart, um, she was taking on the perspective of validation, where, yeah,
Yeah.
I feel what you feel. I know what you're talking about. I've been there. And those individuals are not talking about healing.
Right. And it's okay to sympathize with them, obviously, because you're going through the same thing. Just it's not okay to go down the same path.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we were saying, sometimes it's not, you don't have to reconcile the relationship in the church. Sometimes leaving the church is the best thing. Um, and then sometimes you can reconcile it. Sometimes it's just unmet expectations, and you're like, okay, we can change, we can do that.
Hmm.
Each individual on both sides of it recognizes their faults, and they reconcile and they move forward.
Hmm.
You know, Sometimes it's like, actually, we're not going to change on that one,
Hmm.
so we'll move on.
Hmm.
We can gracefully bow out at this point.
Yep.
Um, and sometimes you get hurt so bad, um, that you end up leaving. So we left one of our positions in ministry that I shared last week, and it just was at a place where it was like, okay, we have to leave here for our own mental health, our own spiritual good. We have to leave this place.
Hmm.
Um, and there was no going back. I hate to put it in perspective of a abusive relationship, but sometimes that's what church hurt is. Sometimes it comes from a place where pastors are manipulative. They're taking advantage of people. They're spiritually, um, you know, misusing people or whatever. And so sometimes you get to a place where it's like, I have to leave,
Hmm.
and that's okay. But you don't have to leave your relationship with the Lord.
Right. You can even, it's been an interesting experience for me. we didn't just leave a church. Ultimately, we left an entire denomination, and so you can leave a church, you can even leave a denomination, but that doesn't mean you suddenly never believed what it is you say you believed all these years.
Yeah,
You don't deconstruct.
yeah. Um, so one of the conversations that Donna and I have had is remembering the good times.
Hmm.
So sometimes we just go back and and we think about all the great memories that we've had in ministry. So yeah, we were hurt and we walked away from a church, and ultimately I guess we kind of walked away from a denomination as well. Um, my credentialing's in one denomination, but we're a part of the Baptist church now, and we love it.
Hmm.
And honestly, we don't want to go back to the old church. Uh, but at the same time, uh, we don't necessarily feel the need to go back and be like, oh, let's reconcile all of our differences.
Right.
You I don't know. This is kind of where we're at,
Hmm.
uh, but we have received a lot of healing, and I'm sure that it's like anything else. You relate it to like marriage, right? That's the thing I was going to say. I don't necessarily want to relate it to something bad like that, but in an abusive relationship, sometimes if a guy is physically or mentally abusive to a woman, she walks away. Um, she may at some point reconcile for relationship with their children,
Hmm.
if that's a thing. But then a lot of times, maybe she doesn't.
Hmm.
Maybe she never goes back. If your pastor is manipulative, if your pastor is spiritually abusing you, that's a good reason to never go back.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Absolutely.
but on the other side, a lot of times it's just relationship.
Hmm.
You know, uh,
Well, it's like we still have friends from that church because we uh, there's a group of guys that I play board games with from that church, and when I first told them, I just sent them all an email letting them know we were leaving, and I said in the email, we're leaving the church, we're not leaving the relationships we made in it,
yeah,
and so we have still have those friends that we still see and hang out with, and you know it, there was no breaking of that relationship. We
yeah,
didn't let that hurt extend to everyone in the church.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. It's like I've said. I don't know who said it first, but anyway, I say it quite often. People typically will pick up on your hurts more than they will pick up on your forgiveness.
Mhm.
And so, one of the things, if I could go back and change it, um, one of the things is I would have been a little more private in our experience with relationship hurt within the church, um, because individuals will pick up on your pains, and they
You mean like after everything happened and talking to people about it?
yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. So like like these situations happen. I was let go from my job. Um, you know, if I could change it, I would not have called so many people and talked to them about what was
Gotcha. I
going
see.
on.
Yep.
I certainly would not have tried to clear the air for my name. There was a part of me that kind of felt like, I need to clear my name on this one. It's not as bad as it might seem at the moment, and
Hmm.
I don't think that I really needed to defend myself in that manner. That comes from a place of pride rather than a place of healing. So it's hurt and pride that kind of bunches together, and then
Hmm.
it goes, oh yeah, go defend yourself. You know,
Right.
and so here I am defending myself and talking about what's actually happening, giving full details when I didn't necessarily need to do that. And so now individuals are like, I can relate to your pain.
Hmm.
Whether or not the same thing happened, they relate to the pain and they pick up that pain. And then, later on, I get to a place of healing and forgiveness, um, and that individual doesn't.
Hmm.
And I can relate that back to marital relationships or dating or something, where an individual might come to a place of forgiving another person, and then the people around them are like, wait, how could you ever forgive that person? So a prime example, um, when I was, gosh, about 12 years old, my little sister was raped and molested by a grown man, an 18-year-old.
Hmm.
Um, and so for years I held hatred in my heart toward that guy. Rightfully so, I believe. Um, but I think I was in my 30s, and I was going through my sister's Facebook, and the dude that had raped her was on her Facebook page, and so I call her, and I'm like, "Girl, you need to get yourself together."
Mhm.
Like, why is this guy on your Facebook page? Um, and she goes, "Well, I forgave him,"
Mm.
and I'm like, "Okay, I'm about this big right now, I'm just
Right.
like here my sister is forgiving somebody,
Mhm.
and here I am years down, way down the road. I'm still mad about it.
Mhm.
Like, there's no doubt to me in my 20s, if I'd have saw that dude again, I'd have probably beat him up, or tried to anyway.
Mhm.
Um, but here she is. She's not even going to church right now. And she's like, "Well, I forgave him."
Mhm.
So I picked up on her pain. I picked up on her hurt, and when she forgave that man, I never picked up on it.
Mm.
You know, I think that happens a lot in church relationships. We leave a place and we experience that hurt and we experience that pain, and then we're like, hey friends, hey Facebook, hey people in my life that I trust, here's what they did to me,
Mhm.
and we push that out there, and then when we receive healing, there's not always a conversation to go back to everybody that we talk to and go, oh, but you know, here's where the healing comes into place. Here's where I've forgiven them. Here's how this works out. Here's what the Bible says.
Mhm.
We just leave it at a place of brokenness with those people.
Right. And they don't get to see the other side of it, and for us, our motivation or our thought process was we didn't want to take anyone with us.
Yeah,
And so, when we decided to leave, we had sort of a tier system. We the people we were closest with, that had helped us through the whole journey. We would tell them the entire story. Then there are some people that we told some of it, and then there are others we just told. We had irreconcilable differences with the
yeah,
church. We just had a disagreement with the church, and we feel called to go somewhere else.
yeah,
Not everyone needed to know the whole story.
yeah, 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 and that's so true. Um, and that's where I go to, like, social media things. So many times, I mean, you probably could tell me a story this week, but how many stories do you see every single week where somebody's kind of putting out their dirty laundry all over the internet?
Hmm.
They're putting on social media. They're like, oh yeah, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, but they don't ever consider the audience. You're friends
Hmm.
with 1,200 people on social media. Um,
You grossly underestimate the number of friends I have on Facebook.
yeah, I'm down to like 400. So yeah, I dwindled mine a lot. But anyway, you got all these people on your Facebook who you're in relationship with, or friends with.
Hmm.
Most of them are just acquaintances or individuals that you've known at some point in your life, but really have no detail, no relational concept of what's actually going on in your life today. And so we get on Facebook and we're like, that church this, and then they
Hmm.
they go, oh yeah, I can relate to that, like,
Hmm.
and now they're picking up your hurt, but they're not laying it down when you do.
Hmm.
So I think the moral of uh, the story here: don't go to Facebook. Uh,
I mean, there's some truth to that.
there's definitely a little bit of truth to that. So we can either walk away, um, and deconstruct from a church or a church hurt situation, or we can stay and find healing. Or there's the option of we walk away, but we don't walk away from the church.
Hmm.
But you also can't walk away from the church and then go, well, God knows my heart, and I'm not going to go to church at all. I won't go anywhere because I don't like church people. Like that's not an option.
Hmm.
Um, I told a guy not too long ago. I said, as many times as people break your heart, give it away.
Hmm.
Like, don't ever get to a place where you box up your heart so tightly that you never give it to anyone. You know, it's going to get broken. It's tender. That's what
Hmm.
happens to hearts.
Right.
uh, you know. But you can't let it get rock hard. You keep a tender heart by giving it away and allowing it to get broken. And you pick up pieces and you give it away again.
And keep in mind that none of us are perfect, so there's probably been plenty of times when you've been the one to break a heart.
Oh yeah, I definitely have been that guy. I told my wife first day before we ever even really started dating. I'm like, she said, why won't you date me right now? I said, girl, I'm gonna break your heart.
Hmm.
uh, I was joking, but I was serious.
Hmm.
And I wanted her to get to a place where she understood that I'm not perfect. Like that googly eyed thing where you're like, ooh, I
Right.
love him, I want to be with him. Like that's gonna fade. And one day you're going to realize that when I put the toilet paper on the roll, it's the opposite of what you do.
There is a correct way of doing that.
There is.
Absolutely.
Um, I found a neutral way to do it that I did
Neutral.
once. Neutral, yeah.
Did it really turn out to be neutral though?
It did for a little bit. Um, but instead of, over under argument,
Hmm.
I flipped that thing. So ours was left right
Oh, how long did that last?
about 6 weeks.
So now, what is it now? Is it
Well, from there it went to no roll, not hanging on anything.
okay?
Just leave it on the sink.
All right.
That was like 2 years.
Hmm.
Uh, and now it's whatever she wants.
Smart man.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
That's how I've been married for 20 years. Gosh, has it been that long? Dear Lord, I'm so old.
Oh,
I'm super old.
we've only been married 14.
Dear Lord, you're still old.
Hmm.
But anyway, so okay, so church hurt. Um, get back in the church, pick up the pieces, move on, um, find reconciliation where it's available, and more importantly, get into the Word. And it's a little cliche in the church world, but pray about it. Allow God to speak to you through His Word. Like don't go trying to find voices, but let God actually speak to you through His Word. Um, and pray about it. Pray about it. Pray about
Hmm.
it. Pray about it. Like I can't say that enough. Pray about it. Um, you know. Anyway, there's life and there's hope and there's healing on the other side.
Hmm.
Um, so tell me a little bit, Jeffrey, about where you're at church right now. What do you like? What do you love?
Well, so it was just a few weeks before we decided we wanted to get back to church. But we had never decided we were leaving the church, capital C Universal, just that we had wanted to, be away for a short time. And the church we're attending now, we actually attended for the first time. I believe it was on a Good Friday service. Just a little small Baptist church. And sitting in the chairs, we actually heard something in that church that even neither of us had heard for years. And that, I don't know if it'll pick it up very well, but it was this:
Yeah,
the turning of pages of a Bible. And it was such a welcome sound to hear because, we just don't hear that in churches so much anymore. And the preaching is just exactly what we were wanting, just a verse by verse. Currently, it's just a verse by verse
yeah,
through the book of Matthew that started. I think it's 2 years ago now,
yeah, yeah,
and that's where we've been ever since. And we just love it.
yeah. That's good. Um, Dawn and I, we talk about our church now and just how much we love it. We talk about it all the time. And, we fell in love with the verse by verse teaching as well. That expository, just verse by verse. Not the expository like, oh, here's a verse and then I'm going to share my ideas for the next 20 minutes and none of it's biblical, but like
Hmm.
actual real verse by verse expository preaching. Um, that was our first encounter with it was at this church, and we just fell in love with it, man. And we talk about it all the time. I told Dawn the other day, I said, hey, one of the things I really like about our church now is the fact that when we go there, I genuinely feel like the people at the church are Christians.
Hmm.
Like they genuinely love each other. They love other people. And I really feel and I believe that they generally prefer others above themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that is not common anymore. You know, in one of our previous churches, I used to help out with parking lot stuff, and we would have people leave church and they would flip me off because I wouldn't let them turn the way they wanted to go.
Hmm.
Like I'm
Like Paul used to do.
yeah, like Paul used to do. But it's been great, man, and we love it. I'm not involved in a whole lot of things like I used to be,
Mm-hmm.
but that's okay because it's just a different season of life for us. So I'm not doing all the things that I used to do, um, but I do love it, and my wife has been encouraging me for the past several months that I need to go to the men's breakfast, and so I was going to go this month, and I wrote it down on my calendar for next week, and it was today.
Oh, whoops.
Whoopsie!
Right?
So
Yeah, I've not been to that yet either.
yeah, I plan to go, but
We'll go together.
we'll go together. Sounds great. Maybe next month.
Um, I was able. So at our previous church, I served in the 5th and 6th grade class, and I just absolutely loved doing it. And in this new church, we started a class called Bridge.
Yeah,
That's for 7th and 8th grade,
that's cool.
7th and 8th graders, and it's been an awesome experience. I'm getting to have a chance to get to know a whole new group of kids,
Yeah,
and it's been so much fun, especially getting in on the ground floor of it. We're the first 2 leaders of it ever. The first kids
yeah,
to be gone through it, and it's just been a blast.
yeah, yeah. That's cool, man. That's
Mm.
real good. So, just to encourage you, kind of in a closing of our episode today, there is hope on the other side of church hurt, and you can find healing. You can get to the other side of this thing, and there are plenty of good churches out there. So if you can't reconcile things at the church that you're at now, find somewhere that you can. There's plenty of churches. If you want, hit me up on Facebook, hit Jeffrey up, and we can make some recommendations. Maybe even try to help you find something in your area. But be encouraged. There's definitely hope. There's definitely something new.
And if you've been through something like this and you've come out, good on the other side, and that you're doing well, and share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear that, and I'm sure other people would love just more that much more that encouragement
Yeah,
for people who may have gone through this or could possibly be currently going through this. Um,
yeah, absolutely. Yep. So, well, I'm John,
I'm Jeffrey.
and we're the Cross-Eyed Guys.
Stay cross-eyed.
So, you ever think you might want to go Cedar Point or something?
Cedar Point, like the
Theme park?
theme park. I like theme parks. I'm not much of a ride person though.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
I'll do water rides.
yeah, yeah.
I don't do roller coasters
Yeah, the older I get, the more roller coasters hate me.
because you're old.